The scent of lemon polish and old books, a fragrance I'd come to know as the very smell of peace, filled the air of my study. I was Arthur Finch, 72 years old, a retired history teacher from the quiet town of Oakhaven. My life, in its autumn years, was a comfortable tapestry woven from decades of small-town routines and the profound satisfaction of a purpose fulfilled. That peace was shattered the moment my son-in-law, Landon Croft, strode into my house without knocking. He stood in my living room, a space that had witnessed more life, more raw humanity than he could possibly comprehend. He was a man who measured the world in square footage and quarterly returns, and he looked at my home not as a sanctuary, but as an asset. "Arthur, we need to talk," he began, his voice a study in false bonhomie. "Mom and Dad's building is going co-op. The buy-in is exorbitant. It's just not feasible for them." I remained silent, leaning back in my worn leather armchair. I had seen Landon circling for months, like a hawk eyeing a field mouse. His visits had become more frequent, his critiques of my sprawling, inefficient property more pointed. The Tuesday morning had finally come. The hawk was diving. "We've found the perfect solution," he continued, a slick smile spreading across his face. "It's a win-win. You move into the Gables. It's a fantastic assisted living community just outside town, top-rated. All your meals, housekeeping, social activities, you'll be cared for." He paused, letting the words hang in the air like a bad odor. "This house is too much for you, Arthur. It's time to be practical." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. "The Gables?" I repeated, my voice deceptively calm. "Yes, I've already toured it. They have a lovely studio available. The movers are booked for Friday. We'll have you packed and settled for Saturday." The audacity of it was breathtaking. He had planned my exile with the cold precision of a corporate takeover. Tuesday, the announcement. Friday, the packing. Saturday, the eviction. He saw a frail old man, a widower living alone in a house too big for him. He saw a burden to be managed, a resource to be reallocated to what he considered real family. What Landon Croft did not see, what he had never bothered to look for, was the truth of this house and the man who lived in it. He didn't see the legacy etched into the very floorboards. He didn't know that the 46 children who had passed through this doorway, who had eaten at this table and slept in these rooms, had not just grown up. They had become a formidable network of doctors, engineers, artists, soldiers, and CEOs. And they were about to teach my son-in-law a history he hadn't bothered to learn. I watched him lay out his timeline, his sense of victory practically shimmering around him. That's when I reached for my phone. Not to argue, but to send a single pre-written text message to a group simply labeled The Orchard. If you're reading this, wherever you are in the world, know that what happened next will restore your faith that family is not a matter of blood, but of bond. It's about who shows up when the winds howl and the foundations shake. By Saturday morning, my quiet, maple-lined street in Oakhaven looked like the valet parking of a United Nations summit, and Landon Croft was about to receive the education of a lifetime. Landon had viewed me with a subtle, patronizing dismissal from the moment he married my daughter. Our relationship began with a handshake that felt more like an assessment. I could see the calculations going on behind his eyes. The modest Ford sedan in the driveway, the well-kept but dated furnishings, and the absence of any obvious signs of wealth. "It's not like you're her biological father," he had remarked once early on, when Clara had suggested I help them look for their first home. The comment was delivered with a casual, off-handed air, but its sting was deliberate. "You just happened to be there when the system needed a placement." Just happened to be there, as if choosing to welcome a terrified, grieving 7-year-old girl into my home and heart for 11 years was a mere coincidence of timing. as if healing her wounds, soothing her nightmares, and guiding her into the brilliant, confident woman she had become was simply a good deed. Landon saw only the surface. He saw a retired public school teacher, a man who drove a 10-year-old car and found genuine pleasure in the quiet rituals of tending his vegetable garden and browsing the local library. He saw the 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch house I'd bought in 1992, 1,800 square feet of worn hardwood floors, and lived in comfort on a quarter-acre lot. It was, to him, a modest asset, ripe for redistribution. What he willfully ignored was the gallery of faces that lined my hallway. 46 graduation photos, a chronological mosaic of triumph spanning nearly 3 decades. High school diplomas from Oak Haven High, college degrees from state universities and Ivy League institutions alike, medical school graduations, law school ceremonies, military commissions. He walked past this wall of testament at every family dinner, his eyes sliding over the frames as if they were generic hotel art. "Arthur, you really should think about downsizing," he'd say, his gaze sweeping over my living room with its shelves of books and comfortable, slightly shabby furniture. "This place is a lot for one man to manage. My parents are in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. This would be perfect for their retirement." Clara would shoot him warning looks, her eyes pleading with him to stop. But Landon, emboldened by his own certainty, never did. "I'm just being pragmatic," he'd continue, spreading his hands in a gesture of reason. "You're 72. You don't need the stress of yard work and home maintenance. My dad is retiring next year. This would solve everything." Perfect for them. The words echoed in the silence he left behind, as if I hadn't spent 30 years making this house perfect for children who arrived with nothing but trauma and fear, perfecting it with love, patience, and the creation of a safe harbor. He mistook my quiet contemplation for weakness. When I'd say, "I'll give it some thought," or "We'll see," he'd exchange a knowing glance with his parents, as if the matter were already settled. The audacity escalated last month. During a Sunday dinner, with Clara serving my famous apple cobbler, Landon dropped the pretense entirely. "Clara isn't even your blood, Arthur. When you pass, this house should rightfully go to actual family, people who understand its value." Clara's face went ashen. "Landon, that's enough." "I'm just being the truth, sweetheart. Your foster dad did a wonderful thing, I'm sure, but biology is biology. My parents raised 3 children, sacrificed for them. They understand what real family entails." That night, Clara called me, her voice thick with tears. "Dad, I am so sorry. I don't know what's gotten into him. He's never been like this before." Dad. She'd called me that for 25 years. "Don't you apologize for him, honey," I told her, my heart aching for her distress. "You are not responsible for the ugliness he carries." But Landon wasn't finished. 2 weeks ago, he appeared unannounced with a glossy brochure in his hand. "I found it, Arthur, the perfect place for your next chapter." He fanned out the pamphlets on my kitchen table, the same table where countless children had done their homework and shared their dreams. "The Gables at Oak Haven, 15 minutes from here. They have a pool, a gym, organized bus trips, everything you could need." "I'm not interested in moving, Landon." "Come on, Arthur, be reasonable. You're rattling around in this big empty house. My parents could take over the mortgage, handle the repairs. It's a logical solution." I looked at the brochures. They showed smiling, silver-haired couples playing bridge and eating in elegant dining halls. But I saw the tiny, impersonal apartments, the loss of independence, the scheduled existence. Landon saw a worn-out old teacher ready to be quietly shelved. He had no idea he was addressing a man who had fought battles in schoolrooms and living rooms, who had armed children with self-worth and watched them conquer the world. He couldn't fathom the army of loyalty he was provoking. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice even. He smiled then, a wide, triumphant smile. He thought he had won. And in that moment, I knew the time for thinking was over. It was time to act. It was time to reach out to the orchard. Because Landon Croft was about to learn the monumental difference between being alone and being surrounded by a family of one's own making. He was about to discover what 46 children look like when they become powerful, successful adults. And he was about to find out what happens when you threaten the man who gave them their roots and taught them how to soar. What Landon fundamentally failed to grasp was that this house was not a structure of wood and plaster. It was the living, breathing heart of a legacy. Since 1992, 46 young souls had crossed this threshold, some for a few stormy months, others for the better part of a decade. Every single one left carrying a piece of this home with them, an internal compass calibrated to love, worth, and the audacity of ambition. The living room, where Landon envisioned his parents arranging their new furniture, was where Isabel "Izzy" Morales had crouched for 4 years, her nose buried in textbooks. She'd been placed with me at 14, labeled difficult and underperforming after aging out of 3 previous homes. No one wanted a fiercely intelligent teenager with a defensive shell of anger and failing grades. This room witnessed her transformation, fueled by late-night talks and endless cups of tea. Last year, Dr. Isabel Morales completed her residency in pediatric oncology at Johns Hopkins Hospital. The kitchen, where Landon's mother doubtless imagined herself presiding over family dinners, was where a tiny, terrified 9-year-old named Ben Carter learned to make grilled cheese sandwiches. He'd come to me after his birth parents' rights were terminated, so traumatized he wouldn't speak and hid in the coat closet whenever a man's voice was raised. Now, Benjamin Carter is a partner at a prestigious law firm in Washington, D.C., his voice heard in federal courtrooms. The master bedroom, which Landon deemed wasted on me, was where Sarah Jane Roberts fought a vicious bout of pneumonia at age 11. She'd been in the system since she was 6, her chronic asthma making her undesirable to many families. She spent 2 weeks in that room, and I spent them in a chair by her bed, reading to her and ensuring every breath was a fight she would win. Today, she is the founder and CEO of a renewable energy startup recently valued at $65 million. Every room was a repository of memories Landon was blind to. Every scuff on the baseboard, every chip in the paint represented a life reclaimed, a future salvaged, a child who learned they were not defined by their past, but empowered by their potential. But this was not merely a museum to the past. The house was still a vibrant, active sanctuary. Just 4 months ago, I had received an emergency placement, a 7-year-old boy named Leo, whose world had been shattered when his single mother was deployed overseas with her National Guard unit with only days' notice. With no immediate family able to take him, the system had turned to me, as it had so many times before. He was sleeping in what Landon called callously despair bedroom. To Leo, it was a fortress of safety in a terrifyingly uncertain world. If I surrendered this house, where would Leo go? Where would the next child and the next find their harbor? Landon saw vacant rooms awaiting their parents' occupancy. I saw a critical, functioning lifeline that had saved 46 lives and was poised to save more. The financial reality was also stark. My 30-year mortgage was a whisper from being paid off. A mere $15,000 remained on a property now valued at over $300,000. Landon's parents would be acquiring a $250,000 asset for little more than the price of a year's rent. But the true stakes were immeasurably higher than money. For 3 decades, this address had been the magnetic north for my sprawling, chosen family. Every Christmas, Thanksgiving, graduation, and wedding celebration had its epicenter here. The children who had grown and scattered across the globe still referred to this as home.
Last Christmas, 18 of my adult children had made the pilgrimage back to Oak Haven. Surgeons flew in from Boston, engineers drove from Atlanta, artists came from New York. The house had thrummed with the energy of accomplished adults who still called me Dad and considered this their true north. Landon sought to erase this tapestry of connection for his parents' convenience. There was another layer he was oblivious to: my specialized foster care license. The state of Illinois had granted me a long-term kinship-style license, allowing for emergency and long-term placements. That license was tied specifically to this address, to this house that had been inspected, approved, and reapproved for over 30 years. Surrendering the house meant surrendering the license. It meant closing a 30-year mission. It meant telling a 7-year-old boy named Leo that his sanctuary was temporary in the most final sense. All so Landon's parents could have a bigger kitchen.
The heaviest stakes, however, were emotional. Clara had been my first and only adoption. Her biological parents, lost to addiction and chaos, had their rights terminated when she was 7. She spent 6 months adrift in emergency placements, a tiny ghost of a girl, before a social worker, desperate, called me. She didn't speak for the first 3 months she lived here. I spent 11 years building a foundation of unconditional love under her, proving to her that she was worthy of being fought for, always. Now her husband was telling her, and me, that our bond was a legal fiction, that biology was the only valid currency, that I was an expendable accessory. If I capitulated, if I allowed Landon's corrosive narrative to stand, what message would that send to Clara? What would it tell all my other children? That the family we had painstakingly built was a temporary arrangement? That love was conditional and that commitment could be so easily discarded? This was no longer about retaining a house. It was about defending a legacy. It was about protecting a family. It was about proving that some things are worth fighting for, no matter your age. Landon believed he was dealing with a gentle, aging man who would yield to pressure. He was on the verge of discovering just how catastrophically he had miscalculated. The confrontation at the church potluck was Landon's masterstroke, a calculated public unveiling of his plan designed to leave me no room for retreat. The Oak Haven Community Church was my spiritual home, the place where I'd taught Sunday school for 20 years and now served as the unofficial church historian. The monthly potluck was a cherished ritual, a time of shared food and fellowship. I was helping arrange slices of Mrs. Higgins' famous peach pie when Landon entered the fellowship hall with his parents, Charles and Eleanor Croft. They were not regular attendees, and their presence, coupled with Landon's determined expression, sent a ripple of unease through me. "Friends, brothers and sisters," Landon's voice cut through the warm hum of conversation. "If I could have your attention for a moment." Pastor Evans, a kind man in his 50s, stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "Landon, is everything all right?" "Actually, Pastor, I'm glad you're here. This concerns the entire church family." Landon opened a leather-bound portfolio, a more formal version of his usual manila folder. "As you all know, Arthur Finch has been a pillar of this community for many years." A murmur of agreement passed through the room. I saw kindly faces turn toward me, smiling. "But time," Landon continued, his tone shifting to one of grave concern, "waits for no man. At 72, living alone in a large, demanding house, Arthur has reached a point where his safety and well-being are a concern." The smiles faded, replaced with confusion. "I know this is difficult to hear," Landon said, his voice dripping with feigned empathy, "but families must sometimes make hard choices. Arthur has been incredibly generous, but it's time for his actual family to step in and ensure his golden years are secure and comfortable." Deacon Miller, a burly man who'd been my friend for 30 years, stood up.
Landon, Arthur seems perfectly fit to me. He climbs a ladder to clean his own gutters, for heaven's sake. With all respect, Deacon, you see him for a few hours a week. I see the day-to-day reality, the forgotten bills, the struggles with the lawnmower, the social isolation. He pulled out documents, brochures for the Gables, what looked like printed emails, even a doctor's note I'd never seen. My parents are in need of stable housing. Arthur needs professional care. It's a providential solution. Charles Croft looked at his shoes, uncomfortable. Landon, perhaps this isn't the place. Dad, please, the Church family deserves transparency. Landon's voice was sharp. For 3 years, I've watched Arthur's capabilities diminish. He's clinging to a house that is a burden, while that same space could be a blessing to a real family. The phrase hung in the air, toxic and unmistakable. Furthermore, Landon pressed on, it's important to be clear about relationships. Arthur's connection to my wife Clara was a temporary foster placement that became a permanent adoption. It was a beautiful act of charity, but it doesn't replace the bonds of blood. She has a real family now. Me, my parents, our future children. Arthur's chapter as a caregiver is over. It's time for him to be cared for. Clara, who had been frozen in horror, found her voice. Landon, stop this right now! Clara, honey, your loyalty is touching, but misguided. Sometimes love means doing what's difficult. He turned back to the stunned congregation. I've made the arrangements. The movers will be at Arthur's house on Saturday morning. The Gables is expecting him. It's a clean, compassionate transition. Saturday? Pastor Evans echoed, aghast. Saturday at 9 a.m., Landon confirmed. It's all settled. All eyes turned to me. The weight of their gazes, pity, confusion, anger, was immense. Landon had painted me as a doddering fool, too proud or too senile to know what was good for me. He had orchestrated this public intervention to shame me into compliance. I rose slowly from my chair. The room fell utterly silent. Landon is right about one thing, I said, my voice quiet but clear, carrying to every corner of the hall. It is time for a realistic decision. I saw the triumph flash in his eyes. He thought I was surrendering. And the reality, I continued, holding his gaze, is that you have no idea what you are dealing with. You are right that this is a family matter, and my family will be here on Saturday to ensure the right decision is made. I turned and walked toward the door, pausing only to add, You're right, Landon. Playtime is over. The confusion on his face was my only reward as I left the hall. The battle lines were drawn. The orchard had been notified. The harvest was coming.
The response was immediate and awe-inspiring. My phone, usually a quiet device, became a command center. The first call came at 6:05 a.m. on Thursday. Dad. It was Izzy Morales, her voice crisp with the authority of someone who directed medical teams. I've just spoken with Ben and Sarah Jane. We are mobilizing. What is this idiot's name? Landon Croft? Izzy, you don't need to get involved. I can handle this. Handle it? Dad, this isn't a negotiation. This is a declaration of war. Give me his information. And I've already looped in Michael Chen and Rebecca Sterling. We're coordinating. By 7:30 a.m., Benjamin Carter was on the line from D.C., the measured cadence of a litigator in his tone. Arthur, I've reviewed Illinois property and elder law on the flight. What he's attempting is not just morally repugnant, it's legally laughable. He has zero standing. I can have an injunction prepared in 2 hours. Let's see what Saturday brings, Ben. I want him to understand first. Truly understand.
Sarah Jane Roberts called from San Francisco, the background hum of her tech headquarters faint behind her. "Ben's right, Dad, but this needs to be a statement. I'm chartering a plane. I'll have a team from the West Coast with me. We'll be there by Friday evening." And so it went. Dr. Michael Chen, a leading cardiologist, rearranged his surgery schedule in Chicago. Rebecca Sterling, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, now an editor at the New York Times, began making calls. Her investigative instincts peaked. Colonel David Petrov, a decorated Marine, took emergency leave from his base in North Carolina. Maya Lin, a renowned architect, canceled meetings in London. They weren't just successful professionals. They were my children. And their network was a formidable living entity. They called themselves the Orchard because, as Izzy had once said, "You planted a single seed of belief in each of us, Dad, and now look at the forest you've grown." By Friday afternoon, the quiet of Oak Haven was broken. Izzy arrived first, her silver Mercedes sedan pulling into the driveway just after 3 p.m. She strode toward me, still in her scrubs, and wrapped me in a hug that erased the years. "Where is he?" was all she asked, her dark eyes flashing. Benjamin arrived 20 minutes later in a hired town car, his suit impeccable, his handshake firm, his hug even firmer. "The cavalry is here, Arthur. Let's see this fool try his hand against the entire U.S. legal system." By 6 p.m., my driveway and street were transformed. Sarah Jane's charter jet had delivered a contingent of a dozen from the West Coast. David Petrov stood tall in his civilian clothes, but his military bearing was unmistakable. Maya Lin sketched the scene with an artist's eye, murmuring about beautiful defensive lines. Rebecca Sterling was already taking notes, a small, fierce smile on her face. The house was filled, not with the ghosts of troubled children, but with the vibrant, powerful adults they had become. The air crackled with shared memory and righteous purpose. "Remember," David Petrov said, his voice a low rumble, "you made us run drills for fire safety. A prepared family is a safe family. And you taught us to balance a checkbook. Financial independence was the first step to true freedom, you said." Sarah Jane looked around, her eyes shining. "This house, it was the first place I ever felt was truly mine. The first place I wasn't a guest." Clara moved among them, her shock giving way to a dawning, powerful pride. I'd forgotten how big our family really is." As evening fell, the strategy session began. It was not a meeting of angry children, but a council of seasoned professionals. "The plan is simple," Benjamin outlined. "Landon expects to find one man isolated and vulnerable. Instead, he will find an institution. We will be calm. We will be professional. We will be an immovable object. We'll form a reception line, a greeting committee. Let him meet the family, one by one." David nodded. "Professional attire, no raised voices. We present a united front of success and solidarity. The visual alone will be devastating." By 10 p.m., the plan was set. Hotels in the neighboring town were fully booked by my family, but many like Izzy and Ben refused to leave, reclaiming their old rooms and sleeping on couches, the house once again full of the sounds of their presence. It was the night before the final exam, and the students were ready.
Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect autumn day that made Oak Haven look like a postcard. By 7 a.m., the street was lined with vehicles that looked utterly alien in our humble neighborhood. A procession of luxury sedans, sleek SUVs, and a few discreetly official-looking cars with government plates. The combined value of the fleet parked on Maple Avenue likely exceeded the assessed value of the entire block. By 8:30 a.m., the 46 members of the Orchard were assembled on my front lawn. It was not a disorderly crowd. David Petrov, with his military precision, had arranged them into a graceful arc. On the left stood the medical professionals in their white coats and scrubs, Izzy, Michael Chen, and several others. In the center were the legal and political minds, Benjamin Carter, a state senator from Ohio, a city mayor from Wisconsin. On the right were the entrepreneurs and creatives, Sarah Jane, Maya Lynn, Rebecca Sterling. The educators, engineers, and civil servants filled the spaces in between. Each held a simple, elegant sign printed on heavy cardstock. Dr. Isabel Morales, Pediatric Oncology, Johns Hopkins. Benjamin Carter, Esquire, Partner, Carter and Vance Law. Sarah Jane Roberts, CEO, Aether Renewables. Colonel David Petroff, United States Marine Corps. Maya Lynn, FAIA, Principal, Lynn Studios. Rebecca Sterling, Senior Editor, The New York Times. 46 signs. 46 testaments. A silent, powerful army of accomplishment. The neighbors emerged one by one. The Johnsons from next door stood on their porch, mouths agape. Mrs. Gable from across the street began filming on her phone. The quiet hum of Oakhaven was replaced by a palpable electric anticipation. At 8:59 a.m., Landon's black BMW turned onto Maple Avenue. I watched from the window as his car slowed, then stopped halfway down the block, blocked by a phantom row of luxury vehicles. His expression, visible even from a distance, morphed from confusion to disbelief and finally to a sickening, dawning horror. He got out of his car and walked slowly, his parents trailing behind him, their faces pale with confusion. The moving truck, a large garish orange vehicle, arrived at 9 a.m. sharp and was forced to stop 3 houses down, the driver leaning out his window, bewildered. Landon reached the edge of my property, the boundary of the lawn where the orchard stood. He stopped, his eyes scanning the faces, reading the signs. His confidence evaporated, replaced by the stunned paralysis of a man witnessing the impossible. Izzy Morales took one step forward. Her voice was calm, clear, and carried the weight of absolute authority. "You must be Landon Croft. I'm Dr. Isabel Morales." She gestured to the assembly behind her. "These are my brothers and sisters." Benjamin Carter stepped up beside her. Benjamin Carter, Federal District Court, Washington, D.C. Sarah Jane joined them. Sarah Jane Roberts, Aether Renewables. One by one, they introduced themselves. A roll call of excellence, a litany of success. Each name, each title was a hammer blow to Landon's fragile, arrogant worldview. "We understand," Izzy continued, her tone icy, "that you have some concerns about our father's living situation." Your father?" Landon stammered, his voice a broken thing. "Arthur Finch," Benjamin stated, "the man who raised us, the man who saved our lives, the man you believe should be evicted to an assisted living facility so your parents can occupy his home." The crowd shifted almost imperceptibly, the collective focus intensifying. "I've reviewed your proposal, Mr. Croft," Benjamin continued, opening his own leather portfolio. "From a legal standpoint, it's fascinating. You intend to remove a competent adult from his legally owned property based on what, precisely?" He's elderly. He lives alone. My parents need—" "Your parents need?" Sarah Jane's voice cut through the air, sharp and cold. "Let me tell you what our father is. He is the reason I am alive. He is the reason Izzy is saving children's lives. He is the reason Ben defends justice. He is the heart of a family that spans this country. This house is not real estate. It is our foundation." Landon looked frantically toward the stranded moving truck. The driver was walking toward us, clipboard in hand. "Sir," the driver called out, "we can't get the truck through. What's the plan?" Landon looked at the driver, then at the 46 formidable faces, then finally at me as I stepped out onto the porch. The scale of his miscalculation was a physical weight crushing him. "Cancel it," he whispered, his shoulders slumping. "I'm sorry," Benjamin said, cupping a hand to his ear. "Cancel the truck," Landon's voice broke, tears of humiliation and shock welling in his eyes. "Cancel everything." The silence that followed was more powerful than any cheer. The victory was absolute. The aftermath was swift and merciless. The video Mrs. Gable took went viral. Foster father's 46 children stage epic defense of family home was picked up by national news. The court of public opinion rendered a unanimous verdict. Landon Croft was a villain.
On Monday, he was fired from his position at his father-in-law's manufacturing firm. The indiscretion, as Charles Croft called it, made him a liability. The church, horrified by his behavior, quietly disinvited his family from all leadership roles. Clara moved her things back into her old room that Saturday afternoon. "I can't even look at him," she told me, her heartbreak now tempered with a fierce resolve. "He showed me who I am at my core. I don't want that near me or near you."
Their divorce was finalized within months. Landon became a pariah in Oak Haven. The town that had known him his whole life now saw only the man who had tried to throw their beloved retired teacher out of his own home. He eventually moved to a city a state away, but the digital shadow of the video followed him, a permanent stain on his reputation. Charles and Eleanor Croft, decent people shamed by their son's actions, moved to Arizona to be near their daughter. "We are so sorry, Arthur," Eleanor told me, weeping on my doorstep. "We never knew, we never imagined." The positive ripples, however, were profound. Donations flooded into the local foster care association, enough to fund a new after-school program named the Finch Initiative. 3 families in Oak Haven, inspired by the story, began the process of becoming foster parents. Leo, the little boy staying with me, looked at the gathering that Saturday and whispered to Clara, "We have a really big family, don't we?" His adoption by a wonderful cousin of his mother's was finalized, but he still visits every holiday, another leaf on our ever-growing family tree. As for the orchard, the bonds were reforged in that fire. Our group chats are more active than ever. We have a family reunion planned for next summer, and the RSVP list already includes 46 yes responses. 6 months after that fateful Saturday, I was pruning my rose bushes when a familiar, hesitant figure approached my gate. It was Landon. He looked older, thinner, the arrogance completely gone from his posture. "Arthur," he said, his voice rough, "may I speak with you?" I set down my shears. "You may." "I was wrong," he said, the words seeming to cost him a great effort. "About everything. About family. About you. I was arrogant and greedy, and I destroyed my own life with it." I looked at him, not with anger, but with the clear-eyed compassion I'd learned to offer even the most difficult children. It was not a forgiveness he had earned, but an acknowledgement of his humanity. Family isn't a transaction, Landon. It's a covenant. It's built in the small, daily choices to show up, to love, to protect. You thought blood was a key that unlocked entitlement. It's not. It's just a biological fact. Family is the choice to love and to keep on loving. Is there... He swallowed hard. "Is there any chance, Clara..." Real change, Landon, is a quiet, internal work. It's not about earning forgiveness from others, but about becoming a person who doesn't need to be forgiven for such things in the first place. The work is yours to do. The consequences are yours to bear. He nodded, tears in his eyes, and turned to walk away. I watched him go, then turned back to my roses. The blooms were resilient, having weathered the winter to burst forth with vibrant color. They were a good reminder. Some roots, when planted in good soil and tended with love, grow deep enough to withstand any storm. And from those roots, an entire orchard can flourish, strong, beautiful, and unshakable.